you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Hello and welcome to the Freelancer Show. Today we're going to talk about responding to RFPs. But first, let's introduce our panel. This week we have Jeremy Green.
Hey, everybody.
And Erik Dietrich.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm Jonathan Stark. And Erik had an idea to talk about responding to RFPs.
Yeah, so this occurred to me because this week I actually have a retainer consulting client for whom I consult on a somewhat intermittent basis that wanted some help in evaluating an RFP that they had sent out and received some bids for. So it seemed like kind of an interesting discussion topic to go into, to be on the other end of that and how one goes about responding to RFPs.
Love it. Jeremy, do you have to respond to RFPs? Do you ever get that sort of a situation?
I don't very often. Back in kind of my previous business life when I was running an agency with a friend, we attempted to respond to, 2 or 3 RFPs maybe, all of them unsuccessfully. And they were for, really pretty large organizations that we were, I think it was a combination of things. I think we were kind of swinging out of our league a little bit, hoping to land a big job that we weren't really quite ready yet to fulfill, and we'd have to, bring on new help. And then also 1 or 2 of them we kind of found out were, after the fact, we found out were not really what I think of as legitimate RFPs, but box checking RFPs. Like the company or the organization had some process that said they were required to do RFPs, but then it turns out that the company that they hired to fulfill the RFP is buddies with the owner, and we never stood a chance of getting that work. Having it out there was just checking a box that's was fulfilling their corporate process that said we have to put it out for a bid, but we're going to go with our friends anyway.
Yep. Yeah, been there. So for myself, I honestly don't think I've ever responded to an RFP ever. I guess I'm just lucky because everybody says that it's a horrible situation. I mean, Jeremy's example, that's a great example of, man, what a pain. But I have helped a number of students who had RFPs that they wanted to respond to try to, because normally I would just say, don't bother, because it's probably a bad situation. It's almost certain that they're trying to compare apples to apples and are going to be probably price shoppers, probably. So
that lines up with my experience, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have, and like Erik, I have done it on behalf of clients where I've been in an advisory role, technical advisory role with a client who needed to essentially have put something out to bid, and they would help me kind of to create the RFP itself, and then to deal with the submissions after that, kind of vet who seemed like they knew what they were talking about.
It always seems like, at least before I might intervene and help a client, that when a client issues an RFP, a prospective client issues an RFP, if they don't understand the world of app dev, it seems that their usual algorithm for this, subconsciously, it's not like they consciously think to do this, they get in a bunch of proposals and then they basically pick the second least expensive one.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the respondents are kind of, it's like playing a game of The Price is Right. You want to go $1 over the.
Right. And how could you you're guessing. You're just totally guessing. Is it Price is Right's easier? It's like you have no clue what the budget is or what other people are saying. I recall helping a client sort of go through proposals that they received based on the RFP that we put together and sent out. And I recall going with one, not based on I know we didn't go with the cheapest one, and I think we probably didn't go with the most expensive one. But I remember going through them and deciding which one we went, or my recommendation to go with, based on sort of an indication that they actually read what we were looking for, instead of just kind of skimming what we were looking for and just, essentially spending no time on it, which is perhaps the right way to respond to one. Just sort of like shotgun, get as many RFPs as you can and just like give them some boilerplate back and slap a price on it. But I remember thinking that the one that most attracted me was the one that had clearly read our request and addressed the individual points. And another thing that I remember about that particular situation was that they were free. They freely acknowledged the parts of what we needed that they were not qualified to do, or they did not feel like they were qualified to do. So, and the thing, and I don't remember the specifics of what those things were, but it made sense. It was kind of like if we sent out an RFP for a really fancy web redesign, something you might see in Harvard Business Review or TechCrunch or something, like a media property like The Verge. But part of the RFP also included like the back end, and they, the response, that wasn't the situation, but it was kind of like that. They were like, well, we're highly qualified to do this front end piece. We can do this and this and this, but we're really not comfortable with this back end piece. We could bring in someone as a subcontractor, or you could go and find someone else for that. But the price we're giving you is just for the piece that we think we're actually good at, and we're not really interested in the other piece. And the sort of confidence that they projected in that response really won me over. It's kind of like when when somebody puts up a job posting for like a full-time position, and they put all this like boilerplate from HR in there about how many years of computer science degree and all that BS. And then you finally get on the phone with somebody and they don't even care. The interviewer doesn't really care about half that stuff. They just want to make sure that you're not crazy and you know what you're talking about and you guys get along, and there's, you have a certain level of expertise. But, I've always found that a lot of that stuff is mostly boilerplate, and really I would look at it as more of a way to get a conversation started than to feel like I needed to tick every single box or not respond.
Yeah, and if you're as a free agent individual responding to RFPs, you might be competing, because I've helped an agency when I was in kind of a subcontracting / consulting role. I've helped an agency respond to RFPs and write proposals. You risk competing with, the box checking you mentioned. They send out this RFP looking for box checking, and as an individual, you risk competing with agencies that are kind of professional at checking those boxes. They have their template. They know how to respond to these things. Mm-hmm. It's a tough road for an individual freelancer to go out answering RFPs. Very time consuming.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it like that, but yeah, they're set up for generalists. With a deep or broad bench, I should say, not deep.
Yeah, and I've heard it said that, especially in government contractors, that people are hired not according to their ability to do the job, but according to their ability to submit to the RFP. And it's frustrating, but I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I see responding to RFPs, especially for a solo freelancer, I see it as a last resort. If you really need the work and there's just nothing in the pipeline and this RFP comes over the transom, then you're not doing anything else. You might as well try to respond to it. But you're probably going to be up against a bunch of people. The timeline could be pretty long. There might not be that much urgency. Who knows? I mean, it's not my favorite. It's certainly not my favorite way for people to be getting work. I suppose it's better than Upwork or the even more commoditized places where you would perhaps put your name out there, but it's only a step or two above that in my mind.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I've seen situations too where you might have an individual that hits a home run, in answering an RFP and then has to turn around and do some awkward subcontracting arrangement or try to hire because often it's going to be more work than, you don't see, at least in my experience when I was a CIO and then when I've consulted with organizations, you're not typically issuing an RFP with the idea that an individual is going to answer it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of to that point, RFPs aren't usually issued by an individual and often not by the economic buyer. It's a committee thing where people are, everybody in the organization has whatever their pet thing is that they're trying to get crammed in and represented in this RFP. And it's often hard to even get in touch with anybody in the organization who can speak intelligently and authoritatively about what it is that they're looking for, why they're looking for these things, what sort of pains they're trying to solve. And that can make it really hard to respond because you can't get good answers to questions because you don't really have access to the entire committee that was involved in putting the thing together.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It kind of makes me wonder. So if I were in the business, and Jonathan, I'm like you, I've never actually responded to an RFP as a free agent. But it makes me think if these things were coming across the wire for me, what might be a strategy for kind of circumventing that and finding the actual buyer behind it? That's kind of something that's going on in my head right now. Like, how could you see that process and detect a gap or a need in the organization that you might be able to speak to directly?
Right. Yeah. Blair Enns talks about this a lot, like because he sort of is really heavily focused on agency owners who probably get lots of RFPs. And his basic approach to this is to recommend that they do an end run around the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Like you said, they do have to put out an RFP. It's part of the process. The machine is like, here's our process. We put out an RFP and we pick the second cheapest one. So his whole approach to it is to try, okay, there's probably a need at this company. We're not going to respond to this RFP, but we'd be happy to jump on a phone call with the decision maker to see if there's some fit. And that's probably not going to work. Like that's probably a dead end, but that is the basic approach that he would take. It's like, okay, they're signaling that there's some kind of need. Looking at the RFP, you can tell that you might be a good fit for it, but you're not gonna. You kind of like position yourself as above that whole process, like it's beneath you, sort of, and try to find your way to someone farther up the organization, and that could be just like reaching out through LinkedIn, like, hey, CEO, I got an RFP from one of your minions, and I'd love to be. You guys seem like an ideal client. I'd love to get your business, but we don't respond to RFPs. They're not good for us or good for you. So if you'd like to talk, here's what we do. Here's why you should talk. Here's why you should jump on a call and see if we're a good fit. But that takes some swagger to pull that off.
Yeah, I can relate. I mean, there's like powerful leverage in not necessarily needing the business, and for me, with like consulting arrangements, for instance, I typically don't need the business now. I'll do some here and there, but it does give you this ability without necessarily needing the money to turn around and say, yeah, that's not a thing I do, but let's talk anyway. I have personally found over the course of being on my own that the more leverage I have that way, the more people respond to it. It's almost a fake it till you make it sort of thing. Like if you were just fresh on your own and you tried that, people might not believe you. Right.
Yeah. It's hard to project that confidence if it's not real. But that is, I think that is, it was kind of like the hourly thing. Everybody knows I'm anti-hourly, and when people come, it's pretty common for soloists to get a phone call from somebody or an email from somebody who's like, hey, we need someone who looks like you, basically, someone who fits the suit, and we'd love to know your hourly rate and then talk about maybe doing a project together. And, I and all my students will say the same thing. Oh, I don't have an hourly rate. And then just let the dead silence hang, and they'll be like, well, how do you price your work? I'm like, well, I'll just give you a price for the whole project so you'll know in advance how much it's going to cost. Is that acceptable?
That makes me think if you were going to get into the business of responding to RFPs, and the idea of offering a price versus hourly billing just popped into my head, that to a buyer, even one on the end of an RFP, there is a compelling element to just quoting them a price versus the time and materials hand wavy estimate thing that they're all used to. So that might be an interesting way to get an inside track, even if you're quoting them a high price. Because most of the other respondents are probably going to do time and materials. If you just say, this is my price, it's going to be $350K, that's it. I do wonder if that would maybe get you a phone call or request for clarification, a personal conversation.
When you start a new project, typically you need things like a domain name, hosting, things like that. When I choose hosting, I pick mine for the options it gives. I like to know what I'm getting and set things up just how I like them. This is why, for your projects, you should check out Linode. Linode servers feature native SSD storage, a 40 gigabyte network, and Intel E5 processors. That's all the power you need to run VMs under full control, or Docker containers, who doesn't love that, encrypted disks, and VPNs. Plus, they have 10 data centers across the world and add-ons like backups, Node Balancer, and Longview to help you control your server costs. They also offer block storage for your static files, and you can get started with a $20 credit if you use the code FreelancerShow2018. That credit is good for 4 months on their 1 gigabyte server. That's a lot of time to try them out and see if they're the right fit for you. That code again is FreelancerShow2018. Also, if you're interested in working for Linode, they're hiring. Head to linode.com/careers to see their available positions.
Yeah, that could work. I could see that working. That it would have to involve a phone call though, because you wouldn't, if you didn't have a conversation with them first about, and if the RFP wasn't clear enough about the outcomes that they're looking to achieve, and it's almost certainly not going to be, it's going to be a punch list of to-dos more or less, then you've got a big probability of scope creep. So the price that I would set for something like that would be astronomical, because you need a new logo, it'll be $3.5 million. Okay. That might get, I could see that. Yeah, I'm exaggerating with a really high number, but if you do throw out a big number, say, yeah, we can do that for X, that's like total swagger, total confidence. And if you can hit it high enough without being comical, like high enough for it to be in the realm of feasibility, then I could see it maybe working, where someone's like, I got to check this guy out. Where'd you come up with that number? And then now you're all of a sudden you're in a conversation. Well, a company like you, how many places is that logo going to be printed? Like once we do this logo, it's probably going to be printed on, 2 million boxes a month. You want to have to change it back after, the initial rollout, or do you want to be guaranteed that it's going to, be a hit with your consumers? And it would probably cost us 10 million just to roll it back. Never mind the brand damage. So 3 million doesn't sound that bad. So I'm sort of paraphrasing Chris Do here. He does a great talk about pricing a logo, but yeah, I could see that working. The basic thing is if you're going to respond to it at all, your odds of getting something good out of it are probably pretty low. Probably, even if you do get something out of it. But if you can change the conversation, then that's cool. Like, because now all of a sudden you've completely differentiated yourself from the slurry of essentially resumes that it's going to pile up on their desk.
Yeah, that made me think of the analog to the working world, where you can send a bunch of resumes to Monster or whatever. I don't know if that's still around, but you can do that, or you can try to somehow finagle an actual conversation to get the inside track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think trying to figure out how to change the conversation is pretty critical, because most RFPs really don't have enough information in them to let you do anything resembling true value-based pricing. They're always light on motivations or pain points that are trying to be solved, and are basically poorly defined and poorly spec'd lists of features that they think that they need.
Mm-hmm.
At least, development proposals. That's largely the ones that I've seen, build this software system, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I got a spreadsheet one time from a Fortune 50 retailer who was thinking about hiring someone to build a mobile application. This is a big company, and they said, I was sort of involved in the, how much. They basically sent me a spreadsheet of features. It was literally an Excel document with about 50 rows, where clearly a room full of people sat around and said, "Oh, it'd be great if the mobile app did this." And it was like a giant junk drawer of every feature you had ever seen on any mobile application at the time. Yeah. and they were basically like, I wasn't going to do it for them. I was friends with some people there, and they were like, could you just give us an idea how much you think we should be expecting to pay for this? And one of the line items was like, this is like a retail business, okay? One of the line items was just a game. It was just 2 words, a game. Inside the app. And I was like, you guys, this is literally impossible. First of all, this is a bad idea. Second of all, it would be literally impossible to even get within $1 million of what this is going to cost you if you actually did it. So yeah, you need to do some kind of, you want to do some more due diligence before you give somebody even an estimate, never mind a price. So, I did have a situation that I think was fairly unusual, but kind of interesting, where a student who had been the longtime sort of call her agency of record for a local nonprofit. She had been doing work for them for a long time. Very good relationship with I think it was the chairman, perhaps, maybe the president. I'm not sure, but someone at the very top of the organization. Great relationship. Everybody was happy. Changing of the guard at the company. And next thing you know, they said, oh, you've been doing great work on the website and our marketing and stuff, but we're going to put this out to bid. So we'll send a copy to you and you can bid on it. You can almost like bid on your job back. And, she was insulted, of course. It was like, wow, okay. You didn't even like talk to me first about like, hey, we're going to do this. It was just like this kind of form letter email, like sent out to dear vendor. And, didn't have a relationship with the new people really. It was, she was new, and this was a while back, so I hope I'm not paraphrasing too much, but the it was a design related thing. And part of the RFP was to essentially do a dog and pony show, like the worst kind of pitching, the thing that Win Without Pitching was written to help people avoid, was like, do a bunch of design work and submit it. Oh, I remember what it was. They in the RFP, they said, here's a design. We need a, I don't want to, I'm sort of like trying to walk the line between giving away private details and not, but there was a piece of paper that needed to be designed. And they said, okay, whoever designs this piece of paper the best, this piece of print collateral the best, will get the other work. And she successfully, and we went back and forth like, that's a bad idea. That's bad for the organization because they're not giving enough information for anybody to even do a good job on the paper, the print collateral. And, there's just not enough information. It's like, without having any conversation about what the point of it was, just design something pretty. And whoever makes the prettiest one will end up getting all this other work that's not even directly related. And so she was like, you guys are basically having a beauty contest to decide who's going to be your nanny, and it just made no sense. And she successfully, if I remember correctly, she successfully talked them out of doing it. So it's definitely possible.
Were they looking to have RFP respondents actually design something that they would then use, or was it an exercise?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it was free labor.
Yep. The worst kind of pitching. The worst kind.
Yeah. Do some free work for us, and if you're lucky, we'll hire you again.
Yeah. Hey, there'll be more like this where that came from. Oh, wait, more bad free work where I'm not allowed to actually do my job. Sounds great. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, spec work. It's like a classic spec work thing.
Yeah.
So what are we saying so far? Don't respond to RFPs. If you have to, do an end run around the whole thing. If you can. If not, if you're just going to respond directly, it's almost the best advice is like lowball it, because that's what everybody does anyway. So everybody's going to be lowballing it and then planning on change ordering the price back up to where they want it once it's too late and the client's stuck with them.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to advise that because I think it's a terrible thing to do to a client, but it's kind of like, if you are going to respond to it, then you better put your price pretty low if you really want the gig. Yeah.
And, I'd say definitely be kind of selective with which ones you respond to. Not all RFPs are created equal, and some you'll be able to tell, just by reading the thing and paying attention, that it's kind of a serious project and that they have a good idea what they need, and that It's not just a laundry list of half-baked features thrown into a document. Because those are the hardest, it's just kind of setting you up to fail. And, I think those your only option is, send them a lowball thing that might result in some work and some change orders, but, that's kind of shady business. And I'm not, I'm like you, loath to recommend that as a thing that people should do.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, my strategy, if I were going to get into the business of responding to RFPs, might be to find ones that looked somewhat promising and then go on to LinkedIn and furiously look for mutual or direct connections to that company to see if I could kind of back channel a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's probably the easiest of all the things we're talking about. That's probably the easiest way to get it done. And now that you mention it, that's exactly how I suggest people get speaking gigs. So like when a conference puts out a call for papers, there's usually this form on their website that you fill out and submit and just sort of sit on your hands and like maybe they'll get back to me. I guess I'll just block out this week in my calendar for the next 6 months just in case. And I'm like, I wouldn't even bother. Like what I would do, you see the conference, you go, all right, who spoke there last year? All right, there's a list of people. Do I know any of them, or am I friends with friends of any of them? Same thing. I'd Twitter, LinkedIn. I'd like try and get in touch with one of the speakers and be like, hey, you're going to speak at XYZ again this year? And whether they say yes or no, be like, hey, do you think maybe you could introduce me to the organizers? I've got an idea for a talk that would be a perfect fit for that conference. Could you put in a good word for me? And they'll be like, oh yeah, sure. Just send me the information. I'll forward it right along, and just skip the whole call for papers thing. Cause then it's like a cattle call, for a good conference.
Yeah. Yeah. And, kind of related to that, a lot of RFPs are going to have some contact information on them, but it's often not really who's in charge of the thing that needs done for the RFP. It's going to be somebody in accounting or HR or whatever department was responsible for producing the document of the RFP, which sometimes is different than the department that actually needs the work done. Mm-hmm. And if you can look at the RFP and get an idea of what department inside of the company is needing that work done, it's probably worth it to try to find contacts or some way to get a hold of somebody inside that department rather than just talking to the person that's the official contact for the RFP.
Totally. What do you have to lose?
Yeah. Nothing.
No. Yeah, exactly. All right. So with that, let's switch over to picks. Jeremy, have you got anything?
Yes, I have an email course that I've picked the last couple of weeks. Increaseyourconsultingfees.com. It's a short email course that'll help you do some more valuable stuff for your clients and make it obvious to them that you're doing valuable things for them. And then my other pick is a book that I've been reading this week called Rock and Roll with Ember.js by Balit Erdi. It's a really good introduction to the Ember framework for anybody that's looking to do JavaScript-based full-page apps or single-page apps. It's really good. Great introduction to the Ember framework. I highly recommend it.
Cool. Erik, do you have any picks this week?
I do. Both of mine are kind of in the life comfort category. The first one is I have a couple of Echo products. I'm not going to say her name or she'll start talking back to us. But one of the things that I found is that you can now use her to dial directly to phones, not just to other Echo devices. So that's pretty cool. I've been taking advantage of that here and there. And then the second pick is, and I can put a link in, but I kind of trucking around the country, and I have this incredible top loader thing that's just the most durable thing imaginable for as we're driving around, loading stuff onto the top of the Jeep that we take with us. So if you're ever in the market for something relatively inexpensive but very durable to put on top of your car, this is it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we got one of those Yakima things on top of our Outback station wagon. It's just like everyone else in our neighborhood. Cool. All right. I've got a couple of picks this week. I mentioned during the show, this talk by Chris Doe from Blind that is basically him giving a talk to a room full of designers talking about how he prices logos. And longtime fans of the show will notice that his advice has a lot in common with the kind of advice we give here, which is to say that we are correct about everything. Another related post is, I'm going to have to do some digging to pull it up. I don't remember the title, but I think it was something about guerrilla clients from Blair Enns, and it's a really long, good article. It's primarily about the sort of problem of dealing with guerrilla clients and how to deal with guerrilla clients. But there's a big section on what to do if your guerrilla client asks you to respond to an RFP, kind of like the story I told earlier. And he's got some really specific strategies for handling that. And then last but not least, I'll pick my usual self-promotional pick, valuepricingbootcamp.com. Next time someone asks you what your hourly rate is, tell them you don't have one, and then go to valuepricingbootcamp.com to find out what to say next. All right, that is it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark. Oh, I'm ending the wrong podcast. Too many podcasts. All right, folks, that's it for the Freelancers show. I hope we'll see you again next week. Bye.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.